Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first episode of a platform I am calling DeepBrief. My name is Kutalani Kumalo. I am a PR and media consultant. I am an MBIT coach, and this is really the result of a labor of love that's kind of been brewing and cooking in my brain for a number of years. What I want to do in the development of DeepBrief is to create a place where we, as the people who have and continue to work in the communication space, that is anybody who works in advertising, marketing, public relations, social media, TV production, event production, any of those spaces where we are consistently providing communication solutions. This platform is for us to come together, to work together, and you'll hear me say this a lot over the coming episodes, but the intention is that we need to leave the industry better than we found it. Now, it's not to say that we came into an industry that wasn't thriving, otherwise it wouldn't, continue to grow. But in each of our different lanes, in our different companies, in our different cities, in our different countries, in the work that we do to build the communications industry, the idea is that the conversations we have on this platform need to get us to a space where we're thinking more critically, where we're having some tough discussions sometimes, where we are calling ourselves out on practices, on traditions that we might continue to keep that aren't doing good for the industry at large. It's a space for us to really look at how we treat people in the industry. Are we valuing our creatives? Are we valuing our account managers? Are we giving the interns the amount of time and, pouring out our skills into them and developing them in the manner that we should? So all of these conversations kind of live in this space. And my objective today in this first episode is to tell you a little bit about the kind of work that I've done to give you an idea about the vision that I have for this podcast. And then kind of let you know how you can get involved, because no man is an island. I am not the only person in the industry. My experiences do not define the entire industry. So I welcome your experiences. I welcome your input. I welcome your questions. I want to have a conversation with your leaders, your clients, your juniors even. Let's really create the space that says, there's enough room for us to have some tough conversations. There's enough room for us to invest in ourselves and therefore invest in making the industry better than we found it. So for the next few minutes, let me just kind of take you through some of the experiences that I've had, what I've done, how long I've worked, and just to give you a sense of the lens or the direction that I'm coming from, when I bring you this platform that is DeepBrief. So I started working, and I haven't checked the calendar, but my very first job was literally, I finished school on a Friday, finished high school on a Friday. The following Monday, I started working in an ad agency. It must have been maybe like the 1st or 2nd of December, 1990. No, it was 1997. Yes. That's when I first started working. So looking at where we are today, that's nearly 30 years of working in the communication space in a variety of different iterations. I've worked in advertising, I've worked in event management, in public relations, a little bit of a stint in television and production. So I hope I give a relatively broad spectrum, on the industry and the experiences. But in that space, let me take you back to what 1997 looked like. For those 2000 who weren't alive then, 1997 was a time where there was no internet, né? There was no Google, there was no cell phones. I still remember, and this must have been maybe like in 98 or 99, my very first cell phone. I felt so proud of myself. I had been working for I don't know how long, and I went to the shop and I bought this. It was purple, it was big, it had like an antenna thingy. You held it like a brick against your face. But all of those things kind of happened and influenced the work that we did at the time. When I came into the agency space, I came in as the most junior of juniors. My title was assistant to the senior account executive. So I've always worked in the client services space. And the job that I had was to become literally a shadow. I shadowed a senior AE for years, and I'm really thankful to her for the way she poured into me. Because what we would do is that if she had a meeting, I would accompany her. I had a notebook, literally, and to this day, when I go into meetings, I handwrite. I don't like to type. I don't like to record things. I make my notes by hand. And you handwrite all of those notes. A lot of things didn't make any sense to me, but my job was be in the meeting with me, write down whatever you understand. We'd get back to the agency. I would sit with Elaine and she would say to me, okay, when we spoke about this is what it means. This is the artwork. This is the campaign. This is the thinking. This is the strategy. This is what we need to do. Then she would dictate to me all of the notes for the minutes of that meeting. So I would handwrite all of those. I needed to have good penmanship, because those handwritten notes were then taken to somebody. We didn't have computers. They were taken to somebody who would type them out. So you had to be really clear in how you wrote everything. After that, the minutes have been typed up. The minutes had to go out to the client within 24 hours so that we could get and kind of secure that this is what we discussed. You said this. If you have a problem with how we've captured the minutes, please tell us. Otherwise, we're going to take what we've done as accurate and we're going to implement it. And what I find a lot now is that we go into a meeting, you talk and we agree on things, and then you walk away, but there's no record of what the client said. What you find then is that a month later, a week later, sometimes at the time when you've concluded the campaign and, payments now have to be made, a person says, no, I don't remember saying that. I didn't say that. That's not what we were supposed to do. And now you, as the agency or as the AE, whoever you are, you're battling to be able to get the proof that says, no, but you said we should do this. Therefore, we did this and we incurred these costs. So when we present them to you, this is the expectation that you'd pay for it. So all of those processes, that formative, like I think it must have been 24 months working in the agency before things got digitized, it really crystallized in me certain processes of how things should be done. How should we take a brief from a client? How do we go back to the agency and write a brief that goes to studio, write a brief that goes to the production about how many, what's the quantity of printing, what type of paper do we want to print on, when do we need this delivered? Write a brief that goes to the media strategist that says we're booking 10 TV slots between 8 and 9 p.m. on these days for this amount of time. And now I suppose with the digital, that brief also would extend to this is what our digital campaign needs to look like. These are the platforms, these are the touch points, these are the frequencies, and this is the budget. So as the AE, you really were almost the driver of what needed to happen. And you had to have such accuracy in the information that you brought back to the agency, because that's what feeds into each of the different departments. So in that process of me doing handwritten minutes, taking handwritten minutes, I would also do what would be called a brief. And a brief was a written instruction that needed to go from one department to another. And that instruction needs to say, dear creative director, we've got a campaign, it's winter, and our client who manufactures blankets wants to increase the number of blankets that are sold this season. They want a campaign. It needs to, start or have images or depict warmth and home and safety and security. It needs to have touch points in print, in television, in radio, and in a billboard. And that then needs to go to the studio, and the creative director and his team would do what they needed to do. I don't know anybody who remembers the 90s. There was something called carbon paper, where you would put it was a thin film, normally blue or black. You'd put it in between pages of paper so that when you write on a page, it imprints on the page below, and you'd have various copies. So I had to learn how to put the carbon paper, write on it, get the copies done, send it to studio, send it to the media strategist, send it to production. And one of the things I really enjoyed doing was following some of these heads of departments around. I would go with the production manager particularly. So if you think of opening a newspaper, and I know everything is digitized now, you don't really have those inserts that you normally used to find in a magazine or in a newspaper. I would go with our production manager to the printers when they were printing each of these brochures. One of the clients we worked on was a division of Pepco, and the campaigns that they used to run as a retailer were seasonal. So there was a back to school campaign, there was a Christmas campaign, there was a summer campaign, and in each of those campaigns we had to do the flyers that would go into each of the newspapers or magazines. So I would go with our production manager to the printers, and at the time the printing presses weren't digitized. They used to run on plates. Initially, the plates used to run on colors called RGB. That was red, green, and blue. And they'd have to mix. So I don't know if you can see the color of my fingernails, right? This orange doesn't live in that RGB. Production and your creatives would have to understand how much red is in this color, how much yellow is in this color. So if we want to take more red and less of the blue and a little bit of the green, will come together with different percentages. That kind of I think it's called a Pantone color that tells you exactly what the color is. So you'd have to go and sit with them and go through the process, and they would run the first proof through the printing machine. And you'd have to take it, let it dry, because you could smell the ink. It was really, really heavy. And you'd let it dry, then you'd look at it and say, does it look like this sample that I have in front of me? Yes, it does. Okay, great. No, it doesn't. Add a little bit more red, add a little bit more blue. And you'd have to adjust it until it was perfect. Only then, when it was perfect, you'd sign it, like literally handwritten, and then they'd run the full production of 1,000, 10,000, whatever the number of copies were. But part of that process was you had to be the custodian of your client's identity and your client's brand. If I signed off the wrong color orange, the client has every right to return it and say, that's not our corporate color, we're not paying for this. Then it sits on my head and my shoulders, in terms of how does this agency recoup the cost of all of this that they've, done with their suppliers, with the printers. So that process then eventually evolved into what was called CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that also made it simpler. They would run plates. It was, a more improved process. There was a process as well called lithography. What happened to litho companies? But that process also was in that value chain of printing and getting things 100% right. Now everything is digitized. You send a PDF, you can even send it via WhatsApp to the production manager at whatever time. They'll put it onto their presses. It goes. Everything has been made so much simpler, and we welcome those developments from a technology perspective. But I think the point I want to make is that we shouldn't take away the effectiveness of some of the processes that we had. We still need to keep the accuracy. We still need to keep that element of, checking and making sure it's accurate and it's correct so that nothing comes back. So all of these processes that happened in the 90s into the early 2000s, where, fax machines, hello, the phone would ring and then a piece of paper would come out of the phone with an instruction on it. And we used to put it on our CVs that I know how to operate a fax machine, therefore you should hire me, kind of thing. Now fax machines are totally obsolete, right? We know all emailing and sending each other stuff on our phones. And it's great to see how much development has happened from that 90s into the early 2000s into where we are now. And I say all of this just to give you some context into some of the things that I've seen. I have not seen everything, but I've seen a lot. I have not done everything, but I've done a lot. And what I really would like to be able to do is to share some of those experiences with you as the weeks go by and the episodes kind of stack up, just to give you some insight into the experiences that I've had. But I'm also then welcoming you to join me, share some of those experiences with me, bring me into your experiences, into your mind, into your spaces. What inspired you? What motivated you? And let's tell the story of how this industry has developed within this space and, possibly continue beyond that. Now, in this journey of growth over these years, I've worked, as I said, in advertising, did a stint in events, worked in PR, which is where I currently work now. What I found is that as I moved from, assistant to the junior or assistant to the senior AE to senior AE, having my own clients, to getting to an account manager level, and then, moving beyond that as one gets more senior, there are a lot of tough lessons that this industry teaches. It can be hard. And I think we all have different journeys. I remember working with a girl. I think she came in at the same level as me, started on a Monday. By Wednesday, the girl was like, peace, I'm out. This is not for me. I cannot work in this industry in this way. And I mean, when I speak about agencies, I understand that there's an agency culture. Things are fast paced. We move quickly. There's an expectation that we're turning things around quickly. There's this, and every time I hear it, it irks me because I feel like it's really unfair. But we position ourselves as always on. So we say to our clients, we're always on. You can call us no matter what time of day, no matter what time of night. We will take your call. We'll do what needs to be done. We never sleep. I don't think that's right. And I've had, different experiences of it in a variety of ways. I'm sure I'll share some of those experiences, throughout the episodes. But the point I want to make here is that as I grew, I got to certain points in the industry and felt isolated and felt unsupported and felt hard done by the industry. So what then happens is that you're in this space where I think I've proved myself. I've done the work. I've, put in the hours. You can rely on me. If KK is supposed to do something, she does it. The clients have a good relationship with me. I'm good with my suppliers. I'm good with the people I work with. I believe it's time for me to grow. I'm ready for a new challenge. I'm ready for a bump in my salary. I'm ready for a new title. But what I found is that at a certain point, I got to account manager level. And then it felt like I just stayed at account manager level and wasn't able to get any, beyond that. I was doing well. I wasn't dropping any balls. Everything was working right. I thought I deserved a promotion. So what happened is that I got frustrated. I got in my head about it and I felt like, okay, maybe I don't fit here. Let me go find another agency. So you job hop. You move from one agency to another, get to the other agency. You'll find that what I found was that I stayed at that same account manager level. Maybe there was like a 700, 800 rand increase in my salary. But for the most part, nothing changed. The same cycle repeated itself. And then I got frustrated again. I was like, nah, man, I'm not going to stay here. And then you jump to another agency. So what happens is that your CV has all of these 6 to 8 months or, 12-month stints at a variety of agencies, but you're still at the same level. So it felt like the industry wasn't allowing me to push beyond that and grow. I eventually got into an environment where I figured it out. It clicked for me that, okay. So if you're an account manager, you are not just demonstrating that you can manage the work and your clients. You are now saying that I can also manage people because an account manager has a junior that you reports to them and sometimes even another one in the form of an intern. So now it's not just about my time. I'm managing my time, but I'm also delegating work to my AE. I'm also bringing my intern on board, and I need to demonstrate that I don't just have competence, but I have the capacity to manage people. When that clicked for me, that's when I saw that I could then move up and get a promotion and move up in the industry. But those years of hopping from one agency to another, I think I still bear the scars of that. And that frustration and that pain stuck with me. So even as I got more and more senior, you get to a space where you're making decisions, you're the strategist, you're the one who's managing an entire portfolio. I still had it in the back of my head that feeling of isolation that I had when I was a junior, that feeling like nobody understands me or I'm doing good work, but I feel like I'm all alone. I don't want the people who I work with to ever feel that way. So what can I do to change that dynamic so that what I experienced doesn't have to be their experience? And within whatever, means I had at the time in those roles, in those places, I hope that I was able to make a difference to the people that I worked with. But I think that's where the seed for DeepBrief was planted. All those years ago, in that challenge that was, how do I make sure that other people coming up, after me don't experience the same challenges and that gap that I felt like I experienced? And it's a definite skills development gap. So years later, a while after that, I stumbled upon the profession of coaching, and I was certified as a neuro coach and have been certified beyond that as an MBIT coach, which is a multiple brain integrated techniques coach. And we'll talk about that in another episode and kind of really unpack it, because it's really, really fascinating, but it's such a beneficial and helpful support tool that I think the industry can benefit from. So in that dynamic of understanding, if you talk neuro coaching, neuro is about the brain. So how does the brain work? Which parts of our brain stimulate which actions, and why? Why do we act that way? Why do we behave that way? And then with the multiple brains, it's saying that there isn't just one central space of knowledge. There are different centers of knowledge on our bodies. So there are different brains on our bodies, and how do we respond to that? So that has taken me on this dynamic journey of looking at myself and healing myself, right? Healing myself of those scars and those wounds that I said I'd carried when I was a junior. But in that process of healing myself, I then am in a space, or have the capacity to say, how can I extend this healing to other people? And how can I offer that space to other people? Now, I have a theory, because I've met more than one coach who has come from an agency dynamic. I think they've also borne the scars, similar scars or different scars to what I have, but they've left the industry and they've gone into coaching. So that says to me, if the agencies around us, whether they're PR, advertising, media buying, whatever, are churning out seniors who feel scarred by the industry, who seek their own healing by pursuing a career in coaching, and then can heal themselves, but then offer the support back into the industry, surely that means there should be a coach in every agency. Because if a senior has left, got a coaching qualification, shouldn't they come back and be coaching those juniors and helping them and strengthening the industry that way? And that's a topic that I'd like to have a conversation with a couple of those coaches that I've mentioned, and we'll do that in one of the episodes coming forward. But that process of saying, I've healed myself, how can I support other people so that their healing journey can be from other things? We shouldn't be all trying to heal from the same thing, because it means that there's the same broken telephone or broken link in the industry that we're all experiencing. So this journey of healing myself and understanding how I can support and input back into the industry also revealed to me that my experience in the industry has been underpinned by a non-diagnosed neurodivergence. By that, I mean, I learned only now in my 40s that I have ADHD and that I'm on the autism spectrum. So I have what is clinically called AuDHD, autism spectrum disorder, as well as ADHD. They kind of intersect together like this. Sometimes they push and pull, and sometimes there's this tiny little space in the middle where a lot of magic happens, where they kind of intersect. But what that says to me is, because I have ADHD, there's this whole attention deficit element to it, where I think the name ADHD in itself possibly needs to be revisited, and that we can discuss at another platform at another time. But what it basically means is that I have a deficiency of dopamine, a chronic deficiency of dopamine. I don't generate enough dopamine in my brain, in my body, to support my needs every single day. So that means I'm always looking for the next thing. And dopamine is that reward, the feeling that you get when you've done something great and you get that reward, a boost in your system. So working in an agency where I have multiple clients on the go, where the pressure is always high, where you're always rushing from one thing to another, has been my way, without knowing, of giving myself dopamine. It might not necessarily have been the healthiest way to do it, but it now makes sense. Like, oh, that's why that 1 month when I tried to work for a corporate and worked in an airline, that I was bored out of my mind every single day and left and went back to the agency, because I need multiple things. It's like the typical images that we have of neurodivergent children on movies, where, little Johnny can't sit still. He's always touching this, and when he's bored, he's going to go and jump there. So he's disruptive in class. He can never sit still, never quiet, always has a story to tell. That, I feel like I can identify with that very, very much. And that, I think, has influenced a lot about how I've hopped from one space to another. When I feel like the dopamine is down, I'm moving somewhere else, and I'm consistently chasing dopamine in my career. But also that has allowed me then to look back at myself and say, okay, I know that I'm chasing dopamine with the ADHD side of my brain, but on the autistic side of my brain, what am I looking for? I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for predictability, right? Which sound like they're two conflicting things, which is why I think sometimes you have this space where everything is kind of pushing and pulling and you're stuck in the middle and you're like, my brain is telling me to do one thing, but it's also telling me to do another. And I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. Therefore, I'm stuck and I don't move. So all of those challenges, this coaching process has opened this up for me and helped me to understand what I've been going through. And it's taken a while. It's taken decades for me to understand that this is who I am. But I think it's also given me the courage to be able to step fully into who I am without feeling ashamed, without feeling embarrassed, without feeling like I consistently have to conform. Because what you'll find is that job hopping that I did, whenever I moved to another agency, I conformed to the point where I'd get there and look and see, how do people dress in this agency? Oh, everybody likes to wear this. So now my wardrobe changes to adapt and fit in, and then move to another agency, and that process goes by. So I think if you ask the people who've worked with me over the years, who's KK? Like, they'll give you a very different version of me because I adapted to fit in, because that was the mechanism I used to survive. So now the person that you see in front of you, as weird and as wonderful as I am, I believe is the realest version of myself that I've ever presented, not only to myself, but to everybody else around me. And I'm very excited for you to come with me as we, kind of discover all of these things. So in saying that, and in then developing this platform that is DeepBrief, I'm coming to you from the perspective that says, I've got this nearly 30 years of experience in the industry across a variety of different, pillars of communications. I've also got this wonderful coaching hat, and I like to call it the coaching hat. Every so often I can put on that coaching hat that allows me to look at things in a different way, that allows me to ask questions in a different way, to get to the root cause of a situation, of a challenge, of a matter. And then, of course, there's the neurodivergence that is consistently, operating every single day. Excuse me. So all of these things give me this very unique lens. And it's through this lens that I'm looking at the industry and asking you to join me as we go through it in this platform that is DeepBrief. So I had said to you right at the beginning, the mission is to leave the industry better than we found it. So how are we going to do that on this particular platform? I'm very aware, just to qualify, that I am not the person who's going to fix the industry. The industry is way bigger than one person, and everybody has a role to play in being able to get to that point. This is the way that I have chosen to contribute to making the industry better. So firstly, what I want to do is I'd like to create this space on DeepBrief as a platform to profile industry luminaries. Isn't that a nice word, luminaries, right? People who shine, people who bring the light into the spaces that they are in. It could be through the work that they are doing. It could be that their souls shine so bright that they impact everybody around them. It could be that the campaigns that they are doing, bring about some phenomenal results. One of the things about this industry that has always irked me is that there's so much work that goes into a campaign. There's so much work that goes into the creative concept. It's presented, you have this back and forth before you eventually get something that goes out into the public domain. And I think the way that the industry measures how the market responds to our work can possibly be improved. Do we really know how people feel about our adverts beyond just, oh, it was great? Does it really convert into, let me go in and buy that burger because I saw Nasty C on an ad with the saucy burger from KFC? Does it really translate? And if so, what can we get into the psyche of the consumer to understand what was the reason I took out my hard-earned cash to go and buy that burger, and really and break that down? So in that luminary space, those are the kind of conversations I'd like to be able to have, to really look behind each of the campaigns, different projects, different clients, their work, their impact, and to see, Is our client really genuinely satisfied with the results that they've got? Is our creative director really satisfied with how the market has picked up on that? Did they get the nuances? Did they see the little thing in the corner that you put there because there's like a little connection to, something, a campaign that you did before? Let's talk about some of those things and open up the market's eyes to some of these elements so that they can go back and say, oh, that's what that was. That's what we were supposed to see from that, and bring them along with us, in the journey of really enjoying the hard work that we put into it. So that's the first pillar, profiling industry luminaries. The second pillar is about profiling the great work that people in the industry do. It is about the people, right? So we want to look at, and I need your help to do it. I can't do it alone because my little black book has only got so many pages and so many numbers in it. So I need you, I'm inviting you to come in and say, let's profile the people that we work with who have done amazing things. And it's not just about profiling leaders. I want you to profile some of the young people as well, people who are, coming up, who've got like energy, who've got this hunger to do good, and who are bringing a different perspective into the work that we do so that we can, encourage them and give them an opportunity to shine and look back and say, this is where I've come from and this is where I can go. And also, match them with the people that that have done, wonderful things in the past, and create this community of really good, maybe good is not the right word, really exciting and capable people, right? Who can feed off each other and do better work as we go forward. So that's the second pillar. And then the third pillar is about healing those wounds. It's about really encouraging us to do more to develop the skills in the industry. It's about feeding back and pouring back into our juniors and giving them a space to be heard. So anyone who was born in the, 70s or 80s would know that there used to be a column in one of the magazines, I think it was called Sis Dolly, where you would write in and say, Sis Dolly, this is my problem. My boyfriend doesn't love me. I think he loves my neighbor. What should I do? And then Sis Dolly would respond and say, girl, dump this boy, go and, date somebody else. Well, maybe not, but you know what I mean. You get the impact or you get the effect. So what I'm hoping to do is not to be Sis Dolly for the industry, but to say, write into me anonymously as a junior. Disclaimer, this is not a gossip platform. This is not a space to say, I think my manager is being unfair because this or that or the other. This is genuinely to say, I am in this industry, or maybe your client is in the motoring industry. And as you've met the client, you realized, actually, I think this is the industry I want to work in. I want to move from communications and I want to go into the motoring industry, but I don't know how to do it. What would you recommend for me to do? Then we can figure it out. If it's not something that I know how to do, when I put my coaching or mentorship hat on, we'll find somebody who can come and give us, some of that input to help you and, make that move. It might be that you've also done that job hopping agency to agency and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So then we can look at it and maybe get somebody who works in HR or somebody who works in a different space that can say, this is what we expect. We expect you to demonstrate this. We expect you to do that. And then you can motivate for yourself and move across. It might be that you are outside, you've studied, you've got a strategic communications qualification from UJ, and you're knocking on the doors and nobody's hiring you. Maybe we need to bring in somebody, and we've got a great resource who runs an organization called CVs and Resumes, who's got a huge amount of experience having worked at LinkedIn for, I think it must have been about 14 years or so. Maybe we need to bring him on board and say, people are not finding work. What are they doing wrong? Yes, they're replying, they're sending their CVs, they're, responding to adverts and on Biz Community, but they're not getting the work. Help us, show us, teach us so that they can present themselves and position themselves better and get the work that they're looking for. So those kind of conversations are what we want to do. And that part of DeepBrief, I want to call agency files. So whenever you see DeepBrief agency files, it's about skills development. It's about pouring back into juniors in the industry and really helping them so that we can, share insights, share ideas. One of the things I learned, and I do, and it has never let me down, when I hear something, like if I'm watching a YouTube video and I hear a person speaking, I go to YouTube and I look them up. I, go to connect with them, but I don't just send a bland connection. I always send a personalized connection. And I say, hey, I heard you saying this and that and the other. I also check if we have any mutual contacts. So if I know somebody and they know somebody and, we're connected to that person, I'll say, we also have 3 contacts in common. Would you want to connect? It has never let me down. Nobody has ever said, no, I won't connect after those 2 or 3 sentences. So what are some of those other tricks that people use to connect ourselves with the people that can influence our thinking, make us better people, and get us to the levels that we want to get to? So those are the 3 platforms. We're profiling industry luminaries, we're profiling the great work that we do, and we're supporting juniors in the industry. That's my contribution to leaving the industry better than we found it, and I'd like you to be able to join me to do that. So the next question is, how do we get in touch with you? It's simple. There's an email address that we'll put up, deepbrief@kutalani.net. If you have any of those agency files questions, if you're a junior and you want to know about, what your challenge is, send it to me. We're going to keep agency files as an anonymous platform, just so that you can have the courage to ask some of those hard questions without feeling like people in your agency or, around you will hear about it and start to persecute you or, make you feel uncomfortable for asking those questions. If you want to be on DeepBrief, you want to come and have a conversation with me, you want to come and say, hey, let me tell you about my perspective. I started working when this happened or that happened, or I started working yesterday and I'm really fascinated with what you're saying. Help me, teach me, let me grow with you. Then you can also get in touch with me on the same email address and we can talk about all of those things collectively. There's another element to DeepBrief, which I think we'll get to it once we get to, later on in our season, is to look at the opportunities for being able to, are we attending some of your clients' events and having, call it a curated debrief conversation around a particular client, a particular event, a particular topic. What does that look like? Maybe we need to look at different industries and have an industry roundtable that says, I need to bring the CEO of this organization and this organization and that organization and kind of have me in the middle with my coaching hat on or mediator hat on and says, bro, this is what we've seen. What can you tell us? This is what we've understood. Did we get it wrong? And just have some of those conversations to really kind of highlight what is happening and connect as well, between the different players and actors in various industries or various sectors, so that we can really get to the core of things in this process of kind of debriefing and unpacking things. So I really want to get to a point where, as you log on to DeepBrief, with each new episode, there's going to be an element of excitement. Okay, are we doing agency files this week? No, we're doing a sponsored or curated conversation. Fantastic. What is it? It will always be through that lens that I said. It's been nearly 30 years in the industry. It's with that coaching hat, and it's from that point of neurodivergence. This is my perspective. There are other podcast platforms that have this industry in mind, and to all of those, I'm like, let's do it together. I would love to be on your platform. I would love to invite you. Let's do a curated or a collaboration kind of thing, because the industry is big and it is vast, and no one person can influence it to the point of complete change. So let's do this together. Let's work together. Drop me a note, even if it's just to say, hey, I've seen you, I'm interested in this, or I like the content, we'll do that. One of the things I didn't mention, and I'll tell you the story of why it's important to me, is the fact that I want to have conversations with people working in the industry around Africa, but also around the world. And the reason for that is, back in the day when you had a lot of global agent or global brands wanting to work on the African continent, there was a time, it no longer is now, but there was a time when, if you think geographically at what the map of Africa looks like, you would have people flying from Europe all the way to the very tip of Africa to South Africa to brief an agency here that says, I want you to run a campaign in the rest of the continent. So there was this thing of bypassing the whole continent and creating or briefing South Africa to then go and manage processes across the continent. There are 54 countries on the continent with a variety of markets. There's no one place. I haven't been to not even half of the countries, but there's no one, market or place that is the same as the other. So it worked at the time, but it now no longer works because, brands are going straight into the countries that they want to get into and only come into South Africa when they need to come to South Africa, which I think is how it should be. So I want to connect with, creatives and people in the comms industry in East Africa, in West Africa, in North Africa, in, Southern Africa, just so that we can really build this community. And also when your clients brief you and say, we want to run a campaign in Botswana, then, you based on this conversation, you'll at least have one, agency that you can get in touch with because you heard one of their creatives or one of their leaders talking about what they do. And hopefully there'll be so many more that you can use DeepBrief as a platform to say, hey, we need to do something in Angola. Who do we get in touch with? And hopefully I'll have had a conversation with somebody that you can give a call to and be able to have that conversation. So look out for those, Africa agency files that look across the continent, and, we'll open it up to the rest of the world as we go along. So there's a lot that I'd like to be able to achieve on this platform. I am excited to be able to be here and offer myself to you because this is an offering of self to the industry, to say, let's do this, let's create this space. Think of DeepBrief as a platform that supports the work that you do. Sometimes you do a great campaign, but because there are other things happening politically in the media space, your campaign doesn't land, and you need a space to say, we need people to know about something. And I wanted to share something with you that I saw on LinkedIn, that I saw a campaign that is being done by an NGO, and their focus is on donkeys, like the animal donkeys. They are saying that statistics around the world are that the rate of death of donkeys is high, and it's increasing because donkeys are overworked and they're not looked after, and they die a sad and lonely death. And it intrigued me, and I think that's part of my neurodivergence, because not once have I ever thought about the plight of donkeys. And I say that from a genuine heart. We know about the campaign for rhinos. We know about the campaign, for other animals that might be extinct, but no one ever thinks of donkeys. So that campaign is important. And in some parts of the world where there are much larger, larger populations of donkeys, it's a big deal. So if there's a campaign that hasn't landed, that people haven't fully understood why this is important, I believe DeepBrief can give you that platform to have that conversation. I want to hear it. Even if nobody else does, I want to hear it. So I'm really inviting you. Get in touch with me, deepbrief@kutalani.net. Let's find the stories that need to be told. Let's bring them to the fore. Let's look at it through this lens that I believe is quite unique to look through, and really start to share and shine about the work that we do. So as I come to the end of this episode, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for landing here, however you landed up here. I want to invite you to share this episode with somebody else. I'm going to get to the point where I'm pushing the like, subscribe, but for now, just share this conversation with somebody else. If something in this last few minutes has inspired you, resonated with you, made you think about something that you know about, just share it with somebody else. And for now, that's my request. Share it, let other people see it, hear it, interact with it for themselves, get a feel for it for themselves. Let's use this episode as what I like to call a chemistry session, where we just get a sense of, man, do we like this lady? Can we gel with her? Do we want to hear her voice, more often? And if you do, fantastic. There's a lot to share with you. And if you don't, I respect that and I release you with love, and it's all good. But for everybody else who's interested in staying, I'm so excited to share what's coming up. Stay tuned. I'll let you know which conversation we're having, which part of the country or continent we're going to next. And let's take this journey together. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll join me in my next episode.